Good evening from Yami BTV. Wishing you all well, of course. So now I break down clinically and decisively the questions that you have been asking me for the last couple of days surrounding the breaking news or kind of really dramatic news. And we talk David Norris, a man that was convicted of the murder, the tragic murder of Stephen Lawrence in 1993, somewhere in Eltham. Now, the only two men that have been convicted of this crime was Gary Dobson and Norris himself. There was meant to be 3 or 4 other men there that night, but they haven't been on trial and they haven't been found guilty of anything, right? A case that caused a massive public outcry. Now, the features briefly on this case is that Norris and Dobson went on trial years and years later and pleaded not guilty, saying they wasn't there, nothing to do with them. It was, I think Norris might have gone on TV, quote me on that if you want, and he went on mainstream TV and told everyone that it wasn't him either, and he wasn't there, right? Alas, they pleaded not guilty and they got sentenced. They got sentenced to life imprisonment. Norris's minimum term on that life sentence, meaning that the most earliest time that you could apply for parole is 14 years. Now, the first set of questions, the first question of some of the questions you're asking me is how come they got small life sentences, 14 and 15 years, because today if you get nicked for knife crime murders, you can get 25 or 30 years. I mean, you don't have to be the man or the woman, lady who does the fatal stabbing. It could be joint enterprise and you still get the same sentence as the man that actually did the knife, put the knife in and did the fatal wound itself. Straight up and down answer is the sentencing policies and the legislation in 1993, at that time, for knife crime murders, the sentence policies and the sentence that you would get are different from today. The reality is that even though it was years and years later that they got convicted and sentenced, they still, by law, have to get sentenced as if the crime was 1993. That's why the sentences aren't longer. Now, the dramatic news coming in is that Norris now says that he was there that night, but he wasn't the man that inflicted the fatal wounds. Now, interesting. The other question you asked me is that he goes up for parole in December, that the 14 years is up. Why now has he turned round? Just as a parole hearing is coming up, some of you suggest. Why do it now, right? People jumping on the fact that Stephen Lawrence's lovely father, right, family that never recovered from this crime, fair to say, has stated at some point that they would oppose parole. They would challenge that he's not to get out. But if he showed change, remorse, Norris, and admitted his part in the crime or the crime itself, or the crime itself, that they would accept that. Now, there are two ways when you read things sometimes that it might mean to some people that Stephen Lawrence's father is actually saying, all right, because he's admitted change, remorse, and that kind of stuff, that we no longer challenge or oppose him getting released. In fact, we agree to it. No, to me, it would never mean that. What it means is that he accepts the apology of what Norris is, with change and that kind of stuff. But he won't oppose it, but he won't agree to it either. And they are asking for a public hearing simply because the families want to have a look and see if there's remorse on Norris's face. And it's a case that's never left that tragic family. And there's many other features to how that whole family was probably destroyed by the events of that night. So that's what it means to me. It can only mean that, right? And many of you know will probably agree with me on that. Now, a minimum term of 14 years. It doesn't mean that the judge, the parole board are going to let you out. There is not many lifers in the history of getting a life sentence that get out on their first parole hearing. Fact, more likely to open prison conditions, right? if you know your prison reports are okay. Now, the mitigating fact, where they're asking for that public outcry as well, it will be mitigating circumstances of some kind, though I don't get it, is that Norris has been attacked 2 or 3 times. I was in the prison at one of those events, right, but on a different wing. But there's many people that get attacked in prison. It's hardly a green flag to say that his really life would become unbearable in prison, that he will be released, that because of that. But that'd be one of the things that they will say, that he doesn't want to have to go through it all again. I don't think that's really good enough, to be honest. Now, the other thing is this, that you're asking me. If he's doing it and coming out in public and saying, well, I did it and I was there, but it wasn't me, won't they ask him? Right, some of you ask me, won't they ask him, well, who else was there then? And is there some kind of deal that Norris has made that if I sit on a parole hearing and tell them who was with me that night and who inflicted the wounds, that he'll get let straight out of the door? I know Norris, I can't see there's any way that he's going to be implicating anyone. The only thing that I believe that he could ever say is that the men that were there that night is that he never knew them, right? So I can't see no deal have been made there. Right, so that's a bit far-fetched, but it's interesting, because if he did say that, and the family could still say remorse, as in, well, then name everybody else and be remorseful for us and let everybody know. But no, the only answer that I could see Norris giving on that is there were other men there. It was just one of those nights, and we bumped into each other. We was all drunk, or whatever it's thing he's going to say, apart from who was really there, unless he really doesn't know who's there. Do I think that Norris should be released? Look, they're releasing all kind of people back into the community for more worse offences. It's not me being less sympathetic to the Stephen Lawrence case, but it was in 1993 under that sentencing policy, and in reality, he served his sentence for what he was given. So what would be different about him to some of the major serial killers and sex offenders and all those kind of people that you've let out and they've been recalled and you've let them out again? What would be the difference in letting him out? You're not going to keep him in there forever, especially now he's admitted his guilt. Now, the other thing was this, to finally finish off, is that, no, as far as I know, you don't have to get parole. We've gone through this before. You don't have to admit your crime to get parole these days, as we know with the Mickey Steele case recently and other cases. That legislation and rule went out quite a while back. Otherwise, Jack Womes wouldn't have got out, would he? So that's the best that I can do on that one. But you're asking me, do I believe he get out on the first parole hearing after 14 years? No, he won't.